Excellent. I'm so excited to have folks here. Very much looking forward to it. One of the reasons why we were doing some testing is I am going to go live prompting for everybody. So it can go all sorts of different ways. And it looks like, hey, Hannah, it looks like you can switch with tabs at the top, but I think we'll try to keep it as simple as possible for folks. But do know that I will be switching into Claude, live prompting. I cannot promise what the results will be. And if Claude decides to have a hiccup today, I have Gemini in the background just in case. So a little bit of disclaimer for everybody. Oh, hey, Nicole. Nice. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, I love to see everyone sounding off in there. Definitely feel free to drop an introduction or say hi. And I'm going to do a very brief intro, and then we'll get to what we're all here for from Elaine. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the first Lunch and Learn of this academic year. Today's is Prompt Craft and AI Fluency, Elevating Your Use of Generative Tools. For anyone who's new to the Lunch and Learn series, this is something we started through the Office of Alumni Relations just to provide an opportunity for our alumni network and our Champlain network to come together, share topics they're passionate about, and help continue educating each other and having conversations around things that impact our daily lives or our working lives. We've done everything from updating your resume to navigating the intergenerational workplace. And you will receive a feedback form at the end of this webinar, which just helps us get an idea of what folks want to be seeing next if you're interested in speaking, and just allows us to be able to create this program to be what our alumni are looking for. Very briefly, doing the welcome right now, I'll give a little bit of an intro to Elaine, but I know Elaine is pretty well known in this community, and it's based on the chat, it sounds like a lot of people have either had class with Elaine previously or some other connection. And then Elaine will take it away with the presentation, and we'll have some time for questions at the end. Again, brief about Dr. Elaine Young. I know when I was a student, I had Elaine for digital marketing classes, and now Elaine is the department chair for marketing, media, and esports management and CCO, and is doing a lot of innovative work in the programming happening in CCO, which is our Champlain College Online program. She is also a committed member of Champlain and has been with the college for over 20 years, serving capacities from professor, program director, assistant dean, and now at Champlain College Online. So we are very pleased to have Elaine back. Elaine was actually a speaker at our very first Lunch and Learn session, which was on AI in the world of work. And I'll be sending this deck out at the end, and I've linked a recording to that Lunch and Learn session too, if people missed that and want to see what we covered in that session. And other than that, yes, so recording and slide deck will be shared with all registrants after, so no worries about trying to take some copious notes. We'll be sharing that all out. Really glad to have everyone here, and I will now hand it off to Elaine to take us through what we're all here for.
Great. Great. Thanks, Bree. So you can bring us to the first slide. Say, hey, we're here for Prompt Craft and AI Fluency. Nice little title slide here. Hi to everybody who's saying hi in the chat. It's great to have you with us. We can hit the next slide, Bree. All right, so what are we going to expect today? So I did do my disclaimer. I'm going to do it again for those of you who are just showing up right now. I am going to go live into Claude at some point. Do not know what kind of responses we're going to get. Could be really interesting. If Claude decides to stop working, I've got Gemini on the background. So anything could happen when we go live, but it's kind of fun to do that. So it is an interactive demonstration format. You are really welcome to work alongside me with your AI tool ready at hand. So you can use ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. I'm pretty platform agnostic. I'm using Claude because we have access to it here at Champlain. Same with Gemini. But you don't have to work alongside with me. You can just watch, listen, pop questions or thoughts into the chat if you wish. The focus here is a professional development focus. It is acknowledging the fact that folks might be really comfortable with what I'm providing and might have some additional advice you want to toss in the chat. Love that. Love that kind of community of learning. May also be some of you are like, still not sure how this is working, still not comfortable with it. So this is for all levels, and really enjoy seeing the chat engagement. So we are going to talk about strategic AI delegation. I'm going to introduce to you the 4D framework, which is something out of Anthropic. We are going to practice a few proven prompt frameworks. So you might have heard, or read in media that prompt engineering is dead. No, prompt isn't is great. Like all this confusing kind of things that are going on. I'm going to tell you that knowing how to ask the right questions in a generative AI tool is your key to success. That means a prompt framework is a really great place to help you do that. So that's kind of my take on it. Yeah, garbage in, garbage out. Ask the right questions. Sometimes it's really hard to figure it out. Sometimes you need generative AI to help you ask the right questions. But the prompt frameworks really help make a difference. So we're going to think about how we evaluate AI outputs, and then you have an opportunity to kind of think about, okay, what are you going to do next, right? Bree, we could go to the next slide. I'm not sure I can tell it to do things. All right. So, hey, did I use AI in the development of this? Yes, I did. I used Gemini. I used Claude throughout the presentation. You're certainly to ask how, I used it here. But I did do it for research. I thought about structure, all sorts of things, and partnered with it, which was really great. So next slide, Bree. Okay, so I like to start and have some current context. So current research, and as current, and I do want to call this out, this was as of like yesterday. All right, that's as current as I can get here. Some new information might come out today. But right now, what we're seeing that organizations are deploying AI fast. The platforms we use are deploying AI fast, almost as if by design. And unfortunately, those of us who are end users don't really know how to use this effectively because it's brand new. So that means all of us are kind of in this messy space, right? And so we're seeing some really interesting data coming out that 95% of AI pilots fail to deliver measurable results. Well, why is that? You deploy AI, but if your systems don't talk to each other and your folks are not trained, how is that going to actually increase efficiency? I think those are pretty good questions. Um, Current research is showing that 42% of companies are abandoning most AI initiatives before production. I'm not surprised for what I just said. And large companies are kind of stepping back a little bit about of their AI adoption. And I think it's just that hype cycle. Everybody wants to jump on it. Everybody's got to do the thing. And then you start seeing the systems gaps within your organization that say, well, you can't actually, systems aren't talking, or there's governance and privacy issues that are like, whoa, full stop. So there's a lot of things that happen at the enterprise level. So all of this to say, maybe you don't have to be panicked about everything and then feed into all of the media headlines, and you can stop and pause and understand that there is an adoption process and there's a lot of factors that come into play. 46% of leaders are identifying skill gaps in their workforces. 78% of executives are confident. 32% of employees not so much, right? So so that's an interesting thing where executives are like, we're good to go. And employees on the front lines are like, not so sure. And then 59% of workers spend more time wrestling with AI tools than if they'd just done the work themselves. So a lot of people aren't seeing these so-called efficiency gains. So that's kind of what we're here for today. Um, Go ahead, Bree. Next one. There we go. So I like to talk about the term sophisticated use of generative AI. right? We want to move beyond the basics, the playing, the, one-off prompts, and we want to start working through how we get more depth and detail and really leverage the tool to help us do our jobs better. In the beginning, don't look for efficiency. Just look for, can I do better with this? Is this helping me more? Then, as you get more sophisticated, more comfortable with it, maybe you start trying to create custom GPTs, projects, that's Claude, or gems, that's Gemini, where you have a repeated thing you have to do over and over. And you kind of work with that to kind of train the system. There's a lot of ways that you can start gaining those efficiencies. But like anything, when you first start, it's kind of messy. That's okay. Doesn't help that it changes every day. Makes it a little bit more hard as well. So the goal isn't to automate thinking, all right? Is to amplify what you can already do, right? And I think that's the key component, and hopefully the big lesson you take away from today. All right, Bree, next slide. All right. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. I like to put it up in front of us so that we are really, as a group, very clear. We know what generative AI can do right now. We don't need to be thinking about what generative AI is going to do tomorrow or next week or next year when we're working in something today, right? There will be advances, things will change, but our current state right now is that generative AI can do a lot of stuff on content. It can help you with analysis and synthesis of information. It can help you think about pros and cons. It can help you see things that you might not have seen before, but it doesn't know your business context. It's not going to make decisions for you because it can't think. Generative AI does not think. It's not going to replace your expertise and professional judgment. And it you can get it to double check its work, something that we're going to work on today, but you still need to get in there and have your knowledge base that kinds of guides it. And it certainly can't navigate organizational politics, although it wouldn't be great if it could. So with that context set, let's move into the next slide. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Anthropic. But those of you who are, Anthropic is the parent company for Claude, which is the platform that I'm going to be using today. They have partnered with a couple professors, one of which is in Cork, Ireland, and they have developed something called AI Fluency model. They have a certificate in AI Fluency. They also have a teaching certificate in AI Fluency, one for students as well. They have some coding ones as well. This 4D framework, though, I think is so powerful because it sets the context for how you want to show up to AI work and using AI. And today we're going to spend the majority of our time on description because that's what we're doing. That's what prompt engineering is. It's describing what you need from the tool. But delegation is great. It's the first place. Should I use AI or should I do this myself, right? How do I use AI? That's the first question you should always be asking. Descriptions in that prompting. How do you communicate with AI systems? There's many different ways to do that. And there's many ways, depending on the task, that you can get into very specific areas. We're going to be focusing today really on analysis, content creation, and those kinds of things. Discernment is, hey, is this really the right kind of content? Are we on the right track? Are the outputs accurate? Do I need to dig deeper? Do I need to do more research? Right? That discernment is your brain, your knowledge coming in to assess the output from the generative AI. Diligence. Diligence is all about AI, responsibility, ethics, frameworks that you use in your discipline, ways in which you need to show up, guarding against bias, making sure that you've thought about all the different pieces and parts. And you notice how all of these kind of tie in together. So I can't recommend enough the Claude or the Anthropic course in AI fluency. I've got a link to the Claude PDF here, but you can always go to Anthropic and look this up and take the course. It's really helpful. All right, Bree, go ahead. So description. So a strong prompt, a way of how you ask generative AI to do the things you need it to do. Understand your task, give it information on background, such as I want you to act as, like, what's the role you're looking for? What is the data I need to give it? What's the situational details? Like, what's going to make this a better output? How much context do I need to give it to get what I need? You can tell it the format that you want for the output, and then you can tell it, don't do this, don't do that. Hot tip for constraints. If you're using generative AI to create any written content, tell it not to include words like journey and in today's digital dot 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 anything, and other, I guess I would say, hot button words that we as humans have used a lot, that the generative AI tools now say that is part of their probability engine. Like, well, because most people say this word, we should use it too. Kind of filter some of those things out. So this strong prompting is what's going to come into what we're going to do next. Go ahead, Bree. All right, so here's 3 prompt frameworks. Now, what I want to highlight for you is all 3 of these prompt frameworks come from a company called Trust Insights, and that is one of the sources that I have at the end of this presentation, in particular, Christopher Penn. I don't know how many folks have heard of Christopher Penn, but I've been following him for, it seems like eons, and he's brilliant when it comes to this stuff. And so Trust Insights have work through all of these different frameworks. They have additional courses and things that they do, but these are some base level things that are really, really helpful in structuring what it is you want to do and get out of your generative AI work. So the RACE framework is pretty straightforward. You do it all in one nice single comprehensive prompt. You say, act as, I want you to do this. Here's some background for you, and I want it to look like this. Pair is, what do you already know about this thing? Okay, here's what I need you to do. What questions do you have? Did we miss anything? And did you really do what you said you were going to do? And you can look at this slide and you can see how the race framework and the pair framework can kind of be mushed together. And you have what gets a much more sophisticated prompt called Repel. Now, I'm not going to go through the Repel framework with you today because of time constraints, but that one is a really helpful one, especially if you're building your own project in Claude or a GPT where you have this repetitive thing that you need to do. Maybe it's vendor comparisons, maybe it's writing blog posts, maybe it's writing LinkedIn content. And you want to create something that will give you really good output consistently. Then you might use this Repel framework to build everything that the way you think that you want to do it. And then at the learn mode, you say, what would be a prompt that would make this work even better? So it learns from what you've asked it to do in the conversations you've had. It helps you create a prompt that you can then put into something else that's repeatable. So these start with more simple to more complicated. I'm going to take a pause for a second because I know I'm talking kind of fast. And I want to check to see if anybody had any specific questions or thoughts or reactions. Did want to remind you, you're welcome to be popping stuff in the chat. I am watching it just to see if there's anything that's coming to your mind or anything here that's familiar to you. And I'll give it a minute. All right. Well, I don't see any messages popping up, but please feel free to pop questions. What are more examples of a repetitive task for Repel? Think of anything, right? So anything that you have to do over and over and over again that is in your daily work. Maybe you need to evaluate email content. And you want to make sure that that email content is appropriate for a specific audience. So you could have Repel help you build out the prompt for your target audience and who they are. And then you can have this project in Claude or GPT and you can say, all right, my target audience is this. It already knows who the target audience is. And so you've got this email, you throw it in there and say, if you were this person, how would you react to that email? And then it could give you some tips on how to make that email better, right? So you can do anything from something as simple as that. I mean, you could create one for communication to my boss if you wanted. Um, Parents, you could be, I want one to communicate to my teenager. So what do I say? How do I say this to this person, right? But for more specific things, like maybe, I mean, I've built out a project for market research for new program ideas because I need to gather as much data as possible on would this be a good program? Well, rather than me doing one-offs, I've built a project, trained it, put information in there, and that's really made a difference for me. Hannah, I appreciate the custom GPTs for your clients. So Rappel structure for page content, yeah, very good. Um, and yes, Larry, like evaluating Google reviews, positive, negative, neutral, absolutely. And you could just drop, once you build it, you could just drop things in, right? It's very nice. It's definitely much more sophisticated use and a good place to get to on those repetitive tasks. So what we're going to do next is we're going to play with all with the race framework and the pair framework to kind of show you how each one is kind of a stepping stone. All right, Bree, we'll go to the next one. All right, so we're going to play today. So we're going to pretend we have to do a vendor evaluation. Try to think of something that was pretty generic across business that a lot of us have to do. If I have any salespeople in the room, the virtual room. If any of you are in direct sales, Christopher Penn just did a wonderful post and content around how this kind of work, vendor evaluation, is going to change and impact the sales process, right? And so as more people start using generative AIs to help them make decisions, are you as salespeople giving them the information they need to put into their AI tool to help them select you? It's a good question to ask. So we're going to pretend that we are part of Green Mountain Strategy Partners. Now, you are welcome to follow along and pretend that you're Green Mountain Strategy Partners too, or you can kind of follow along with your own project or just sit and watch. So what you're going to see is a basic prompt, a generic comparison, what you get, then what race framework will get you versus that basic prompt, and then what pair refinement will get. So again, as we're doing this, pop stuff in the chat. Um, Share your own resources of ways in which you stay up to date. If anything I did here surprised you, how might this approach change your vendor evaluation process? Um, what worked? What felt different from your usual research methods? So that's what we're going to play around with. And we're going to be flipping screens here in a moment, but Bree, go ahead to the first basic prompt. Yes, here's Green Mountain Strategy Partners. Here's a little information about Green Mountain Strategy Partners. Completely made up, but they could be pretty cool. A sustainable business consulting startup in Vermont. Here's some information about them. And we don't really need a lot of this, but this just sets some context. Go ahead to the next slide, Bree. All right, so now I'm going to take over and I am going to share Claude. All right, and if I could just have confirmation that folks can see Claude. Thumbs up, something like that. Bree, Heidi. Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. Appreciate it, folks. All right, so here's Claude. Claude's very helpful. And so we're going to start with our basics. So we know a little bit about Green Mountain Strategy Partners. Excellent. Make sure everybody can see Claude. That might, can I make it a little larger? I'm going to give it a try. Let's see if it will let me do that. How's that? Is that better, Sue? Excellent. All right. Okay. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to I'm like, okay, I gotta figure out these vendors. I got some sales calls later this afternoon. I've got a guy from MailChimp talking to me and a lovely lady from ConvertKit that are trying to convince me to go with their email marketing tool. I need a little help. So Claude, help me out. I want to know MailChimp, ConvertKit. All right. So there we go. I am using Claude Sonnet 4, by the way. All right. So we're getting some information from Claude right now. Should be really helpful, right? So what's the current state of MailChimp and ConvertKit? We can see that Claude is doing some research, reminding you again that Claude is not actually thinking because it's generative AI. Generative AI doesn't think. All right, so let's see if this is going to how this is going to help me. All right, so we've got an objective comparison of MailChimp versus ConvertKit. We're going to call it Kit. It's now Kit for email marketing. All right, so MailChimp is best known for serving small businesses, agencies, and direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. Most of us are familiar kind of with MailChimp. Um, ConvertKit or Kit is built first and foremost for brands of one, so for small. Okay, we've got a pricing comparison. Now, disclaimer here, and I think this is what's really important when you're thinking about that discernment of the 4Ds. What do I know that Claude is doing right now? Claude is doing a search of the web. So if pricing information is not on your website, and I am trying to decide if you are within my budget and I'm using a generative AI tool to do that, your information won't show up here. And therefore, I might not pay attention to you. So that's just a little note for those of you who have pricing information that might matter in the process of the sales process. So now it's identifying a gap for me. Kit will charge you $75 per month for 5,000 contacts. And now, and whereas Kit will charge you a premium price of 89. So now I'm wondering, I'm using my discernment. There's an error in this source. And it says Kit is generally more expensive as lists grow. So it's letting me know that there's something weird going on there. It's given me some key differences. You can see its sources. If I wasn't on a time frame for a webinar and this was work that I was going to do, I'd probably go click on those sources and look at them to see if they're actually current sources and actually useful. It gives me some advantages. It shows me some gaps. Notice it's showing report information from 2022, even though the site says it's 2025. And I don't know if Mailmodo is a good source, but there we are, practicing that discernment. There's a high deliverability rate for Kit. We've got ease of use, and they're saying it's MailChimp. And critical assessment and recommendation, telling me choose Kit if you're this, choose MailChimp if you're that. Here's our bottom line. Now, what's really interesting is it is asking me, you should clarify your primary use case and list size projections to make the most informed decision. And it's actually making additional recommendations. Really interesting. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of helpful. I'm not sure if this is as helpful as it could be. It's not making a decision for me, but it's giving me some information. Now, let's do something a little different. So I'm going to start with a new chat. Remember the kind of information we got from the basic prompt, which didn't even tell them anything about who we are as Green Mountain Strategy Partners. So I'm going to paste in some content here and I'll walk you through it. So I'm saying you are an experienced marketing consultant specializing in email marketing platform selection for growing professional services firms. Okay, there's my role. The action is analyze and compare MailChimp versus ConvertKit for our email marketing platform decision, providing a strategic recommendation. Now I'm giving it some context. Green Mountain Strategy Partners. We're a 25-person sustainable business consulting startup in Vermont. We're currently using a basic newsletter tool, but need marketing automation. So I'm providing it with some additional context. And for the execute, I want them to provide a comparison that evaluates ease of setup and daily use, automation capabilities, AI integration features, and cost versus ROI. I want them to include a clear recommendation with implementation considerations for a small team. Now, to make race more powerful, I'm not going to do it here, but a simple thing to add after this part of the prompt is to say, what additional questions do you have for me before we begin? And then it will take this information and it will ask you a set of questions, which will start getting you kind of the midpoint between race and pair, because it'll start asking those questions and then you'll start finding that you're beginning a collaboration process. But this is race all in one, everything right here. Let's see what it does. Okay, again, starts similar to what we did before. You can see we're looking at comparison feature pricing. As it's thinking, anybody have any thoughts or questions? I don't know what it's going to do here. Matt, go ahead. I see a hand. I see a couple hands coming up.
Those
We
were
got
hands that were raised a little bit ago, so I don't know if those were old questions or new questions, but I just put them up for in case they have something.
okay, awesome. All right, Matt, did you want to throw out a question? You can type it in the chat or you can unmute and ask a question. Okay, I'll give that a second. Mark, same for you, or Kristen, because it says Mark and Kristen, so I'm not sure who that is. If you have a question or.
We had a question come through the chat.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. That's a great question. So depending on the AI model you're using, you might get different outputs. But when you're prompting, especially if it's for content in this area, if it's coding, we're not talking about coding, so I'm not going to dive into coding here. But these frameworks are pretty platform agnostic. And so you can really use them regardless of what you're doing. And depending on how much time we have, I can show you what it looks like in Gemini. But it's very similar, but you are going to get different results to some extent because generative AI works in the moment. And so I will tell you, I have practiced this several times to make sure it wouldn't break completely, doing my due diligence. I'm getting different responses each time. And so that's the thing to keep in mind with generative AI. It goes out and does things at that moment and brings you information. So the prompt frameworks is what helps kind of keep you like structured in your approaches between the different AI platforms. Does that make sense? Does that work for you? Hopefully. Yeah, awesome. Great. All right. So now look at what we got here. In doing this race framework, and I asked it to give me a specific output. Now it's giving me my executive summary and recommendation ready to cut and paste into a Word document that I can then share with my leadership. Woohoo. But first, we want to take a look at this. So it's saying MailChimp emerges as the stronger strategic choice. And so it's walking us through why MailChimp has advanced AI capabilities, a comprehensive feature set, professional automation tools, all these wonderful things. MailChimp for the win. MailChimp has not paid me for this at all, unfortunately. So we've got our detailed platform comparison, and these are the items that we specifically asked for, right? We needed ease of setup and daily use because we have a small team. And so it's giving us a little bit of information on how we set up and if it's easy to use. And now you can kind of see we've got some of the same sources. So again, that due diligence part and the discernment part would have you dig deeper in this before you just one-offed it, right? We've got some information on ConvertKit, simpler, cleaner interface, more beginner friendly, faster setup. So they tell me right here, winner ConvertKit for initial ease of use, MailChimp for professional scalability. Automation capability, which we do care about these days, right? Maybe we're not ready for AI automation, but we want to be ready for it when the time comes. And then here's our AI integration features. So we've got some information here on how they've integrated AI so far. Now, our due diligence would have us questioning, do we have the right kind of information that we would even put in to a tool like this from a compliance standpoint and a privacy standpoint? And ConvertKit has limited AI features currently available, giving us again that cost versus ROI analysis. Not too different from what we got in the basic one. Real quick pieces of information. And here's what's missing from ConvertKit for your needs and MailChimp's advantages. It tells us some implementation considerations and actually gives us some timelines. What's really great about this is it does just save me some time. It gives me a place to start looking deeper, to kind of assess a little bit more. And it saves some of that preliminary kind of process that I would need to do. And it's giving me some success factors. It's telling me resource requirements. It's giving me additional information that I might not have even thought about. Recommending some risk mitigation, and our final strategic recommendation. So we have some really good information to start with from our RACE framework. Really helpful, I think. Is this something that I'm going to copy, paste, and give to my boss? No, I'm not, because it still requires my due diligence and my discernment on, notice me using those 4Ds, on if this is really an accurate piece for me. Remembering, of course, I have those sales calls this afternoon. Okay, so now let's play around with pair. So we're still doing the same exercise, but now you're going to see what happens when we change it from a one big prompt and just wait for it to feed us information, and we move into more of a back and forth. I will call out that this could be the place where we break a little. So we're going to first start by priming Claude, and we're going to ask it, what do you know about email marketing platform selection for small professional services firms? What are the key factors that determine success for consulting companies choosing between platforms like MailChimp and ConvertKit? Okay, so now I want to know, what does it already know? And now we wait again. And now it's doing similar to what it's done already. It's searching the web. We don't know yet if it's going to come up with some of the same sources that it did before, because I'm asking quite a bit of a different question, right? And so now it's searching for different things. All right. So now, for those of you who are involved in vendor selection, for those of you involved in email marketing, let's see if it knows enough, right? So professional client expectations. So this is what professional services firms need. They need professional looking emails, integration with business operations, not wrong. Automation sophistication, so advanced automation capabilities, not wrong. I think several of you, as far as I know, are in service firms. Professional services perspective, so we've got our MailChimp advantages, our ConvertKit advantages. So some of this is repeatable from last time, from the other ones. Some interesting decision factors. Many firms discover they're overpaying MailChimp. Very interesting to think about. And they have issues with duplicate contacts across lists. And then how to find email success with ConvertKit. I would check that source. Is ConvertKit saying MailChimp's not so great? We're talking about strong deliverability and cleaner lists for ConvertKit. So now we're starting to get a little bit more information than we had with the other two prompts. It's also highlighting gaps. So specific use case comparisons, insufficient data, lack of analysis on platform performance. Okay. So, and their bottom line recommendation is, here's some of the things that we think about. The decision should ultimately depend on whether you prioritize operational efficiency or comprehensive marketing capabilities. So that's something to think about. All right, so I've done the priming. I know now what it knows. Now I'm going to augment. And by augment, I'm going to add pieces of information that is going to include our context. I'm going to include our current situation, and I'm going to give it our task. Okay. So I'm going to pop that in. So I'm going to reply to Claude because this is now when we get into our conversations. So now you can see I'm telling it what I need. I'm giving it some company context. I'm providing our current situation. And so now I'm giving it information that the other two prompts didn't have. I'm repeating our task from our race framework. And then the most key component, which is something that I noted before, that you can take the race framework and kind of move it closer to the pair framework, is before you make this analysis, what additional questions do you have about our specific needs or constraints? All right, so I've given it information, and now I'm going to make up a whole bunch of silly answers. Okay, so just want to let you know. So it's going to ask me a set of questions. Now, look at the kinds of questions it's asking: current workflow and team structure, communication strategy and goals, integration requirements, budget and growth constraints, content and branding priorities. Okay, so I need to answer every single one of these questions. And the great thing about this is we can just do them right in order. All right, so who are the 1 to 2 people who will primarily manage the email platform day to day? We're going to have a marketing admin and the operations manager. Again, Elaine's just making this up. What's their current technical comfort level with marketing automation? We're a sustainability company. I'm going to say low to moderate. Are you currently segmenting your context in any way? Let's say industry. Notice I'm just giving it my one-word answers. I'm not providing tons and tons of detail here, but just enough. What types of emails are you sending? Okay, so we're going to be doing newsletters. We're going to do events, and we're going to do thought leadership because that's cool. We don't have the capacity for nurture sequences yet. We're not there. How frequently do you communicate with your list currently? Let's say 1 to 2 times a month. Maybe that's too much. Maybe it's not enough. Do we want to plan, create automated sequences? Yeah, we would like to. Integration requirements. What CRM or client management system are you currently using? Okay, folks, we're a startup consulting firm, so this is going to be a little painful for some of you, but here we go. I'm trying to be realistic. We do not have one. We use Excel. Anyway, I think that's pretty realistic, actually. Do you have a website platform? We use WordPress. Any other business tools? No, no. We focus on sustainability. We don't know tech. What's your monthly budget range for email marketing? I don't have a number in my head right now, so I'm just going to say low. With 15% monthly growth, you'd hit 4,000 contacts per year. How sensitive are you to pricing tiers based on subscriber count? Very sensitive. Do want to let you know that in my practice runs with this, it asked me very different questions, which is very cool. Are there any specific compliance requirements for your B2B clients that might affect platform choice? And since we do some international, we're going to say GDPR. Content and branding, oh, very important. We need, let's see, professional looking email, very important. Do you need to create different messaging tracks? Yes. Are you planning to use email for thought leadership content, client case studies, or both? both. So just all I did was answer one right after the other, nothing really full, but here we go. Now let's see what happens. And that's our augment. So now this is our second step in the pair framework. And now you can see it's repeating the same kinds of things that it did before, but now it's looking for other things, searching for WordPress integration and GDPR compliance information. It didn't do that before. All right. And now it's giving me the executive summary, still saying MailChimp is the better choice. Although we do have long-term advantages worth considering for ConvertKit. Now, notice how it gives me some different information than it did before. It's given me more depth, more things for me to look at. So we're looking at ease of use is MailChimp is the winner because we like to know things like that very quickly. It's walking me through what the integrations look like, automation capabilities, ConvertKit with caveats. So it's giving me some information there. It does talk about practical implementation. MailChimp's the winner for AI integration features. Now it's giving me a little of that cost versus ROI analysis. Game changer, hot tip, make sure that your outputs don't use the term game changer. I've been hearing that an awful lot lately. The game changer is Kids Free Plan is more generous of the two. Here's our return on investment considerations. Here's the GDPR compliance. They're both fully compliant. And here's why MailChimp is better. Here's our implementation timeline, cost benefit analysis, when to reconsider ConvertKit if your list exceeds 6,000. Now, my mind goes immediately, I don't know how many of you do, to once I start a new tool, I am not going to change it again later because that is not fun. So I am noticing some things that I would dig deeper on. So now in the pair framework, we want to do our refresh step. And we really want to make sure, have we missed anything? Have we taken everything into consideration? So in this case, I'm saying, considering our Vermont location, small team size, and sustainability focus, what additional factors should we evaluate that might affect our platform choice? What did I overlook? This is where it gets really fun. And one of the things that I like to highlight about prompting, no matter what framework you use, one and done is never good. I'm hoping that you're seeing that the iterative approach of asking more questions, double checking your work, checking the sources makes for a stronger output and something you can be more confident in. So we've asked excellent questions. I love it when it makes me happy. I heard the little pop thing for a hand raise. So if someone wants to either say something out loud or
Put
drop
that in the
something in the
chat.
chat.
Are there limitations of resources available to AI? Do they differ with different AI platforms?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Yes, so a lot of people are getting access to free tools, and those free tools have limitations such as context windows and how much you can ask them. At one point, they did not talk to the web. That's changed. Now they talk to the web, but you need to go into your settings to say, yes, you may talk to the web. There are times when you don't want it to talk to the web, so you tell it not to do that. Depending on the model you use. So for example, I'm using Claude, and I did tell you I'm using Sonnet 4. We could do much more in-depth research, which would use more of the tokens, which is what is the amount of context window and let's try to break that down without using technical terms. It's the amount of stuff you can put into it and how much it will put out. If I go to Opus, it's their deep research and it can look at a lot of stuff. but I don't really need that much. It's similar to ChatGPT 5, where right now the way it's set up is behind the scenes. It's like, this isn't really a hard thing. I'm going to use a lower model that uses lower context and lower tokens. So, yeah, there are limitations of resources available to AI. And you always want to double check. And if you have your internal content and it's vetted so you can actually use it in that space, then you can add it to the tool to get more personalized information. So great question, Sue. Juan, review and self-critique before answering. Yes, and we're actually going to do that on the next step. So I love that. That's really, really important. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Matt wanted to know about, will AI make something up when prompted, but the prompt isn't refined enough? Yes, it makes things up all the time. What I love is when you're working with it in an iterative step, and I mean it, I do love this. When you're working with it, you're showing it information, you're giving it stuff, and it makes things up from the stuff you've already told it. And you're like, I never told you that. And it's like, yes, you did. And you're like, and then you get in an argument with a thing that doesn't think. And so that's why your brain, you are the end stop goal of all of this, right? It is your knowledge and your framework and your understanding of, like, no, you're making things up. Blind trust in AI is horrible. Yes, that's the idea of an AI hallucination, where it has so much information. Remember, it's a probability engine. All it is doing is mathing in the background to say this word comes next, this letter comes next by a probability standpoint. So it can get easily confused. Sometimes it's quite humorous when it does that. So kind of fun there. So I think, have we gotten everybody's questions so far, I think?
Looks like.
So as we've been doing this, um, yes, and it apologizes, Hannah. Yes, sometimes when it does that more once or twice, it's time to start a new chat. But yeah, I think it apologizes. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And then it does the same thing again. How can I improve? Don't do the same thing again. But yes, that can be kind of interesting. So we've identified several critical factors, and this gets at one's kind of point about like asking it to self-check. Additional critical factors, major oversight on my part. Your platform choice should align with your values. Now it's giving me carbon footprint data, platform considerations, and we have no commitments found in the research for MailChimp. Same thing for ConvertKit. Now suddenly I get EchoSend as a planet-friendly alternative to MailChimp. I never would have thought about it, right? And so now this might take me on a different path. Sustainable email practices you should implement. Vermont small business ecosystem support. Customer support and time zone considerations. Brand alignment with Vermont values. Now they're talking about maybe ConvertKit would be better. Rural internet infrastructure considerations. Test both platforms' performance on your actual internet connection. Yes, absolutely. I love that. Local client expectations. So notice suddenly we have a whole bunch of new information, and now it's recommending ConvertKit. Now, what I love about this is that it's given me other things to think about that might not have been top of mind, right? I might not have actually been like, okay, gee, I should have done that. And it's giving me consider adding powered by renewable energy or similar messaging to align with your sustainability focus. I definitely check that one out. Um, Vermont uses more dial-up internet than any of the other states in the country. Yes, Larry, 100%. So we've gone through 3 steps of the pair framework now, and this gets at that self-check your work. We want to evaluate this. Is this really like, do we really have everything? What have you really not do? So now the question is, okay, review your analysis and recommendation. So it's got this whole area that it's gone through and it's given me lots of information. I'm like, are there gaps? Did you adequately address all 4 criteria? What weaknesses or limitations should I be aware of? What additional research would strengthen this analysis? Now, I know we're almost out of time. So, one of the things that once you get this information, I'm pushing back, you can see what the major gaps in the analysis are. So, as this is giving me that information, what you could do with this next, say you do actually have a vendor call after this, you can then ask it based on all this information, give me a list of questions to ask the vendor. If your vendor call is in a couple of hours, you can then say, based on these questions, craft an email for me that would prepare the salesperson for the vendor call. Now, when you think about what we've done here in this webinar, I've shown you how to do all of these things probably in about 45 minutes. And if you think about the times you've had to do vendor research and you've had to think about it, look at how using these prompt frameworks allows you to get access to information and approaches that you might have missed that would allow you to ask better questions. Is this tool making the decision for you? Absolutely not. Is it helping you make potentially a better or more informed decision? Absolutely. And it's doing it quicker than you probably could have done if you'd like popped over to the website here, popped over to that website over there, and then talked with a salesperson. You're able to come at it with a lot more critical questions and thoughts, especially at a time when every dollar counts. And you can see that it's talked about what it overlooked. It's talking about the critical gaps, major weaknesses. It recommended MailChimp for ease of setup, but then switched to ConvertKit, right? It's identifying what it didn't quite do very well. It overweighted the values alignment, insufficient support evidence, assumption about client preferences, growth path uncertainty. Here's more research that's needed. And so even this tells me some more things I could continue chatting with this tool about to gather more information to prepare me for a decision like this. So here's the honest assessment. My recommendation flip from MailChimp to ConvertKit was reactive rather than analytical. We should trial both platforms simultaneously with your actual use cases rather than rely on my analysis alone, given the gaps identified above. So this does provide you with a really interesting way of looking at it. And imagine if you'd only done that basic prompt, where you might be versus digging in deeper and getting into a more of an iterative process with a tool with the pair framework. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will leave it to Brianna to pick up. And so that's the basic prompt.
Yeah.
And then you'll want to go to the next couple. And there's a couple more of the pair framework that we walked through and our key takeaways. So hopefully this gave you a sense of the difference between basic and structured AI prompting, how frameworks can help you move AI from something like, here's a list of features, to actually a thinking partner with you, remembering that AI does not actually think. Why sophisticated use requires iteration, refinement, and validation. So the next steps for you, again, I'm really sold on this 4D framework, so really recommend that you do that. Practice and iterate on the frameworks that work for you. Keep playing. For those of you who are a little bit more sophisticated, if you haven't jumped into GPTs or projects or gems in Gemini, start playing with that. Remember, your goal is amplifying your expertise, not replacing your judgment. And the next slide is, how does Elaine stay up to date? Because this is always the thing. Thanks, folks. Christopher Penn, Nicole Leffer, Joseph Feller, Joy, Timnit, Ramnesh, they're all people I pay attention to. Trust Insights is a great website for help, and there's the Anthropic. All of these are linked in the presentation. And always keep learning.
All right. Well, thank you so much for everyone who joined. And thank you so much to Elaine for walking us through this. Make sure to fill out those feedback forms. And if you want to learn other areas of AI, you can add that to the form and we'd be happy to make that happen. But thanks so much for coming and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
And thank you, Elaine, again.
Certainly.